Tell us a little bit about this project that you've been working on for the last 6 years. You're working with a number of smallholders on sustainable agriculture. Tell us a little bit about that project.
Well, basically, we furnish enough seed for a couple of acres of winter and summer cover crops, and they pretty much decide the cultural practices and so on, and they're all different. So some of them we learn a lot from, and others are a bust, but it's all informational.
Yeah.
So we're gradually building up a number of growers that are interested in sustainability.
Okay.
And it's been several generations since they've practiced that, so they need to relearn it.
Yeah. Okay. So in other words, some of these practices were practiced before we had all these basically kryptonite to deal with these things. Okay. Tell us why soil health now becomes that important to these farmers in this whole context of sustainability.
Well, I think, again, the whole process that we have to go through starts with good soil health.
Okay.
So we need to build organic matter. If we can get to 3%, we're in pretty good shape. I think we're very sustainable at that point.
Okay.
So getting there is a process. I think we can do it with just cropping.
Yes.
But we can also put manure on.
Right.
That brings a whole other set of issues because we're short of water.
Yes.
If the growers are using groundwater and they have a salt problem,
yes,
that compounds. And also a lot of these soils are heavy in salt to begin with.
Okay. Yeah.
So the depth of the well is important.
Yeah.
How many irrigations they get from the Rio Grande is important.
Yes.
If they get, we only got one this year,
Yes,
so
yes.
that's, you can't flush out salts much with one irrigation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are all issues that relate to saltiness and how you treat the soils.
Okay. And when you talk about soil health, what does that mean to you? And how is that defined on these plots that these experimental, not experimental, but these small holdings that you have?
Yeah, there are a lot of things we look at. I think we can boil it down to one or two indicators,
Okay.
really. CO2
Yes.
evolution for one, worms population can be another, organic matter is another one.
Okay.
So the microbiome density and the types of microorganisms you have, mycorrhiza, are quite important.
Okay.
Physical structure is important, and so is chemical, but I think we can really get a pretty good clue from the biological goings on in the soil.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I noticed that you have a number of ways that you're beginning to measure soil health. I'm assuming a farmer always wants results that he can kind of put his hands on, right?
Yeah.
So are there any kind of measurements that you found that really work for the farmer, rather than sort of things like you've got so many earthworms, is there something that's simple that you're using and that shows promise?
Well, they can look, as far as the soil microbiome is concerned,
Yes.
well, CO2 is certainly probably the most straightforward way.
So you've got an easy way to measure soil respiration.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're using the Haney-Brinton soil CO2 respiration method there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We, of course, use a compound microscope and can get visualization, and there are programs now that will automatically count fungi and bacteria. So
Okay.
you can do that fast, but growers can't do that.
Right, right.
But we can do it very quickly in the laboratory.
Okay.
So that's kind of a follow-up to
Yeah.
sort of confirm that the other results are where they should be.
Okay, so the idea is that you're building those up. Or at least you're seeing a positive correlation between soil CO2 or CO2 respiration and how much microbial activity you've got in the soil. Is that correct?
Well, we haven't carried out that many experiments, but
right.
I think that's the way we're going, and I think we
Okay.
can do that. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let me think. you had some instances, you mentioned that you were building organic matter at a rather astounding rate, something like from 0.75% to 1.5% in 1 year. That sounds like an incredible number. I've seen that in my own sort of gardening experience. But tell me how you build organic matter and how you've been successful at building organic matter in the soils here.
Well, it's just a matter of summer and winter cover crops and getting enough residue that organic matter is built. You know, some of the summer cover crops we use get 12 feet tall.
Yes.
So you can get a lot of organic matter very quickly that
Yes,
way.
yes.
I had one grower say, you know, he could hardly get a tractor through it. It was so big.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that we need to see done. You'd have to sacrifice a crop to do that.
Yes.
And normally I think we can grow our cash crop in the summer and do a winter cover crop and do things adequately.
Yes.
But if you're starting off from scratch, you might sacrifice a year and build organic matter to a fairly high level quickly.
Yeah, yeah, okay, all right. You had a few examples of perhaps the mindset that we've developed over the years when we have access to
chemicals.
When we have access to chemicals, and it's like sort of you finally have found this kryptonite to be able to get rid of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do that, there are things that we don't recognize.
We had a really good example in pecans a few years ago when black pecan aphid became resistant. And in some of our orchards, the leaves came off midsummer, and because of resistance, it was kind of like walking through wet snow because of the honeydew on the leaves. And that was a very expensive deal for the growers. So that's brought on partially by using too much nitrogen and building up aphids, which are notorious for increasing their populations under conditions like that.
So in other words, the additional nitrogen in the soil is stimulating that aphid population. Mm-hmm. And so I guess we get into that cycle where we're trying to hit it with some kind of pesticide. Okay.
Yep. And then you get in a syndrome of using pesticides over and over again, and then resistance usually results from that, where you can't control them with anything. Then that's when you're really in deep trouble.
Okay. And then of course the pesticides, you'd mentioned that the pesticides don't discriminate between the good guys and the bad guys. They
For the
kill
most
everybody.
part, that's true, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what you see for the future of what you're trying to do for small-scale sustainability, and sometimes not that small-scale stability, small-scale sustainability for small-scale and sometimes not so small-scale farmers over here.
Yeah, we're looking really at a kind of a broader approach, and that's sustainable finance to begin with, and then power, drip irrigation, sustainable agriculture, and all that implies. So a complete package, that would be solar panels also.
Right, right.
And there have been some breakthroughs on solar panels recently. They're much more efficient than they used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
33.9% efficient, last I read, which is pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. So you're harvesting a lot of sunlight like that.
That's right. So that would be totally sustainable.
Right, right.
So we're pushing that, but you know, growers can pick and choose whatever they want.
Yeah.
And I think it really starts with the soil.
Yeah.
And after that, you can go as far as you want to go.
Okay, yeah. Now you have people who are embracing this whole concept of soil health, farmers out there. Why do you think some of them are embracing it, and why do you think some might be not as keen on embracing some of those ideas of soils and soil health?
Well, we have several chili growers that are organic, and what they've noted is they run out of nitrogen mid-season and they don't get the yields they should be getting. And they haven't been growing winter cover crops. So I think that's the key to getting more production. This last year we planted some Esquina chilies at the end of the season. They were transplants.
Yes.
And we had to hold them for 4 weeks in a lath house because we were leveling the land with a laser leveler.
Yes.
So they were very stressed when we put them out, and I didn't really think they'd last. But they came on really well, and the first pick was 5,000 pounds of chili, and I think there are probably 2 more picks in there.
And that's the field that we saw this morning.
That's right.
Out there, yeah.
So the plants are stunted, but they really did set the fruit. And I think if you started out at the beginning of the season with good solid plants, you really produce.
And that field history, then you basically had planted a winter cover crop, right? So
there were 3 years of cover crops, winter and summer.
Okay.
So it had high organic matter.
Okay. What was that organic matter content then?
I don't know. We're in the process of
Okay.
Measuring that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But I know it's higher than anything else we have.
Okay. Right. So that's probably a good indication. And again, an indication, I guess, that your nitrogen is coming from the decomposition or mineralization of that organic matter.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, before we go out and do a little bit of looking around, excuse me, around the fields, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Well, I guess those are the main things. I think basically the way to go sustainable is pretty much the same over the United States. It's the details we have to worry about for each location. So that would be varieties and planting times and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But the formula for going sustainable, I think, is pretty much the same.
Well, and unpack that for me. What would that strategy look like to go sustainable?
Winter and summer cover crops, no more trips through the field, and you have to have using crimper rollers for weed control. Those are some of the main elements.
Which reminds me, this is not chronological, fortunately. You did talk about some successful use of roller crimping rather than turning in some of these cover crops into your fields.
Yeah, we're just starting that, but it looks like that's a pretty good way of controlling weeds. And weeds is one of the major stumbling blocks right now.
Yeah.
Most of the growers depend on Monsanto for weed control. So if we can make that work, then I think we're off and running. And I feel good about that. I don't think we should be disking any more than we have to.
Yeah.
Plant directly in the soil.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.